Imagine crouching at a rock shelter 43,000 years ago. The sun drops behind the hills, the temperature plummets, and the dark closes in. If you were a hunter-gatherer, an unexpected shift in the seasons is a death sentence. You need to know when the river will flood, when the herds will migrate, and when the freezing rain will arrive. If you cannot anticipate those events, you starve. To survive, you need a clock. You have the sun, of course, but the sun is limited. It goes up, it goes down, and it resets completely every 12 hours. That daily rhythm is useless if you were trying to track a span of 3 weeks or measure the distance between winter and spring. Under the sun alone, every day looks identical to the last. But the night sky offers something different. The moon is a shapeshifter. It appears as a thin sliver, swells to a thick, glowing disk, and then shrinks back into darkness. It provides a slow, visible countdown that anyone on Earth can track without a single tool. This sequence maps that exact transformation. Astronomers call this full phase cycle a synodic month, and it takes about 29.5 days to complete. That 29-day stretch gives human beings a manageable unit of time, something larger than a day, but small enough to hold in your memory. Recognizing that rhythm gave early humans a tactical advantage. Instead of blindly reacting to the elements day by day, they could observe the sky, count the phases, and prepare, anticipating the future rather than just surviving the present. The remains of one of these early records might be sitting in a museum drawer right now. This is a small piece of a baboon's leg bone found in the Lobombo Mountains of southern Africa, dating back roughly 43,000 years. Someone sat down with a sharp piece of stone and carved a row of deliberate marks into it, creating an external memory stored on a physical object. The bone contains exactly 29 notches. When archaeologists find a prehistoric object bearing a 29-mark tally, the immediate temptation is to conclude that someone in the Ice Age was carefully tracking a full lunar cycle, etching a line for every night the moon rose. We know this practice caught on. Fast forward 20,000 years to the banks of a lake in the modern-day Democratic Republic of the Congo, and we find the Ishango bone. This artifact takes the concept much further, featuring 3 distinct columns of notches grouped in specific sequences, including 11, 13, 17, and 19, the prime numbers between 10 and 20. When the researcher Alexander Marshak placed these artifacts under a microscope, he made a startling observation. The individual notches were not made in a single sitting. They were cut using different tools at different angles over what appeared to be weeks or months. He argued that these were running records, time-factored ledgers tracking the phases of the moon. But the scientific community remains cautious. Skeptics, like the researcher Francesco De Rico, point out a common human flaw. We are biased toward finding meaning in noise. A modern observer looking at random tally marks is likely to see lunar cycles or prime numbers, where an ancient hunter was simply counting spears, traded goods, or successful hunts.
Even under the most skeptical reading, the underlying fact holds true. An ancient human deliberately held a specific quantity in their mind, organized it into a structure, and committed it to a hard surface so they wouldn't forget. They were measuring their world. By 10,000 years ago, that instinct to measure had scaled up drastically. In a field in Aberdeenshire, Scotland, archaeologists uncovered a massive Mesolithic site called Warren Field. Here, hunter-gatherers carved a series of massive pits deep into the earth. When you look at the wider site layout, a specific pattern emerges. There are exactly 12 pits curving in an arc, each varying in size in a way that mimics the moon growing and shrinking across 12 lunar months. This diagram shows the mathematical drift inherent in lunar calendars. 12 lunar months only give you about 354 days. The solar year, the actual cycle of the Earth's seasons, is 365 days. Follow the moon alone, and your calendar quickly falls out of sync with the Earth, eventually causing the seasons to drift away from the dates meant to track them. The builders at Warren Field somehow understood this discrepancy. They aligned the 50-meter arc of pits with a specific notch in the nearby hills. Once a year, on the morning of the midwinter solstice, the rising sun would shine directly down the line of the monument, serving to re-anchor the lunar cycle to the solar year. This annual alignment corrected the drift before it could misalign their understanding of the seasons.
Without metal tools, agriculture, or a written language, these people diagnosed a complex astronomical misalignment. They used the landscape itself to build a permanent architectural solution, physically binding the cycle of the moon to the cycle of the sun. This drive to track time appears independently across different continents and eras. Look at the Nebra sky disk from Bronze Age Germany, roughly 3,600 years old. It relies on the exact same hammered gold motifs of a solar body and a crescent moon to keep the calendar straight. But as we look back at the oldest tallies on record, researchers have started exploring one final, intimate hypothesis. The persistent appearance of the number 29 in early artifacts might not be exclusively tied to the sky. There is one other highly predictable, roughly 29-day rhythm in human life, and it happens entirely within the body. The average human menstrual cycle closely mirrors the length of a synodic month. It is possible that the very first mathematical attempts to measure time were biological. The people etching lines into bone may have been linking the reproductive rhythms of their own bodies with the rhythms of the moon. When you glance at your phone to check the date today, you are participating in a direct continuation of a survival strategy developed in the Ice Age. Whether using a baboon bone or a smartphone, we are still doing the same thing, trying to hold time still long enough to make sense of it.